for the average dog owner, I think the hardest thing for them to work through is loose leash walking, which is different than a heel. It's just teaching the dog not to pull, but they can be ahead or behind or next to. They just can't pull. That is probably one of the hardest things for dog owners to teach.
This is the Turn Your Life Around podcast, and I'm the 180 Lady. I've been helping people turn their lives around since 2007 as the founder and CEO of a large mental health company. The purpose of this podcast is to have meaningful conversations with old friends and new friends, everyday people just like you and me, about how they turn their lives around. We'll discuss all things mental health, fitness, finances, relationships, parenting, spirituality, you name it. My hope is that you can take something away that will encourage you today. I'm your host, Sarah Coates. Are you ready to turn your life around? Hello, welcome to the podcast. I'm super excited about our guest today. We have not had a dog trainer on our podcast before, and I don't know if you're a dog lover like I am. I can't get enough of them. If I could, I'd have a farm of 900 dogs. So we're really excited to have a dog trainer speak with us today and tell us a little bit about how she turned her life around through this really cool way of training dogs and animals. And we're just going to welcome Denise to the podcast. Welcome, Denise.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks so much. I'm excited to chat and hear about your story and how you turned life around, how you got into dog training. And then, of course, we could talk about all the things dogs if we want to. So, but if you will, I know you do a little more than just dog training. And so if you would mind sharing with the audience a little bit about yourself, where you're located, what you do.
Sure. Well, hello, my name is Denise Partlow. I'm actually a full-time school teacher. I have taught many different grades and subjects, but currently I am what they call an interventionist. So I work with struggling students. I pull them from their classrooms and I work with them for about 30 minutes and then I send them back to their classroom. And I am located in South Carolina, where I started my own dog training business on the side. Do you want me to get into that story as well?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I wanted to ask, though, how long have you been in education?
This is my 23rd year.
Yes, I thought during our pre-screening chats that you had mentioned it'd been a long time. And so what grade levels do you do intervention for?
Right now it's elementary, and our school houses kindergarten through 4th grade.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the work you do to serve children. I know in this area of North Carolina where I sit, a lot of the kids went back to school last week and this week. So I think this resonates with a lot of people just getting their children back into school. And we love teachers and faculty and education. So we appreciate what you do for the future generations.
Thank you. It's a hard job.
Yes, I know it is. Oh my goodness. You know what? Actually, before this podcast, I was just talking with someone who's a public school teacher, and I said to her, literally, I think we all would agree 100% that teachers don't get paid enough.
That's always a hot topic.
It is a hot topic. So tell us a little bit about your dog training company. What is the name and how on earth did you get into this?
So the name is Modern Canine, sometimes referred to as Modern Canine Carolinas, because I'm serving both North and South Carolina. I live right on the border. So it actually all started with prayer, believe it or not. During the pandemic, as everything shut down, I had prayed for a way to serve others because I just didn't see how I could be of help when we were all locked down. And little by little, God began to show me that the way I could serve was by helping people with their dogs. I didn't know it at the time, but what was happening is I had just adopted a dog about a month before the pandemic hit. So in February of 2020. And he was a mess. He was a handful. Doberman. Loved him to pieces, but he was a lot of work. He had a lot of issues. And a lot of my neighbors were noticing that I was making some really great progress with him because during that time, all anybody did was walk around the neighborhood because that's all we could do. And they kept stopping me and asking me questions. How are you doing this? How are you walking 3 dogs right now? I just want to walk my one, And I'm like, oh, I'll come over and show you. And then like every day somebody else was coming to me and stopping me on our walks, asking me how in the world I'm doing X, Y, and Z. And I was like, I'll show you. Cause like, what else did I have going on? Right.
Yeah.
And I started noticing that I was loving it. I got myself like my little calendar book and I'm writing down like whose house I'm going to on what day. And at this point, the quarantine had stopped, but nobody was really going anywhere and school was still closed. We were virtual. And so I found myself really enjoying just showing the humans, like teaching them, because I am a teacher. So it made total sense to me that I'm loving the teaching aspect of it. But this time I'm getting to work with adults. And some children too, and dogs. Yeah. But, really it comes down to teaching the owners. And so it wasn't stopping. I told my husband this, I feel uncomfortable asking for money, but it's not stopping. People are throwing gifts at me left and right. I just felt really weird about taking it. And they were very generous too. I was like, no, this is an answered prayer. You don't have to pay me anything. So they started telling their friends and their friends started telling their friends and it wasn't ending. So I decided to go ahead and get certified, which you actually don't need that in the dog training industry, but I wanted to do that more for myself. It made me feel comfortable charging clients knowing I had that certification. Plus being a teacher, like I'm just so used to getting certified for every little thing. So yeah. I went ahead and did that and like, here I am. It just hasn't stopped. They haven't stopped asking for help and I love it. I really, really enjoy it. People ask me all the time, when are you going to quit teaching and go into dog training? I'm like, I love both. It's so hard to make a jump like that. I don't know that I want to. So that is not in the plans. I have to find a balance for doing both.
So my biggest question as I hear you talking about how you got into this is, how did you even know what to do? So you have this adopted Doberman. It sounds like he was a mess, but how did you know how to keep him in line and other people don't know how to instinctively do that?
Yeah. I mean, ever since I was young, I love animals. It's always been something that I find a way to get involved in. So before, like while I was just a teacher, I would find any opportunities I could to just like deal with this passion I had for animals because, I'm a teacher. So how much time do I really have? I was a classroom teacher at the time and I had 2 small children. I have a husband who's a firefighter, so he's almost never home. So when I was going to have time. So I used to volunteer at shelters. And one of the very first shelters that I volunteered at, this was back on Long Island in New York where I grew up. They taught me a lot. They really wanted us to learn how to make these dogs more adoptable. And so that's kind of where it started, like the passion for learning about dogs and their behavior, and communicating with them and walking them, things like that. That's where it started. So I was probably about like 19 at that stage. And it just grew from there. I kept reading my own books, looking up my own videos. I was just, everybody jokingly called me the dog whisperer. Right. Like anybody that's good with dogs, that's what you get coined as. And so I just kept learning and then working with more dogs. You really start to realize, wow, they really are like humans in that they have different personalities. So you do have to approach them differently based on their likes and dislikes. And when I got Lincoln, my Doberman, he was not responding to the normal things that I trained with. So I had to think outside of the box. I had to really stretch out my thinking and figure out something different for him. And so I, again, just started researching, just started watching videos like everybody else does. Like that is what I provide on my social media platforms. It's just education. So I'm so thankful for trainers that did that because that was so helpful for me to be able to see it. And then I could apply it and then see for myself, it worked or it didn't work. and just from there, I just kept going. I never stopped studying. I continuously read books, go to seminars, but honestly, working with dogs one-on-one is like really where it comes from because every dog I work with, even now, teaches me something new.
So that's an interesting point you made that every dog has a different personality. And I can see that. I've had a few of them myself. And you're right. They all have different personalities. So what do you do with a stubborn dog?
Well, first, I don't call them stubborn.
That's it.
We
Number
would,
one, don't call
yeah,
them
it's
names.
very, very rare because when we think of the word stubborn, we that means that the dog is choosing not to do the good thing, even though they know it's the right thing, or that it's the good thing, or that it's the better decision. So really what it comes down to is the dog's unmotivated to do that thing, because in their mind, the decisions they're making, the route they're choosing, the action they're doing is a good decision. In their mind, that's a great decision. So when you come across a dog that it feels like they're being stubborn, it really has more to do with one or two things. They really don't know what their options are. They have not been taught properly or prepared properly for whatever challenge that you're putting them through, or they're just unmotivated. A lot of times motivation is what's lacking the most. And my students
Right.
are not any different. I have to motivate my students to do some of the things I ask them to do. They don't always do it just because you told them to. My own
Yeah.
children don't just do things because I told them to unless they're motivated, you know.
No, that's a valid point. I'm a parent as well, and you're right. I mean, I told you so doesn't always work. And
Mhm.
so it has to have some carrot at the end of the stick, some
Yeah.
motivator for
And
a
sometimes
human
it doesn't
and a
have to
dog.
be, yeah, sometimes it doesn't have to be a positive motivator. It
Mm,
could be, well, if
mm,
you don't clean your room, I'm taking away your iPad, you know, so.
right,
So for dogs,
right.
it's not any different. They just have to be motivated, whether they're receiving something and looking forward to receiving that thing, or avoiding something that they don't want. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that is interesting. What do you think is the hardest thing to train a dog to do?
It's more difficult to train the human, to
Okay.
be honest.
Right. So you're training humans more or less.
Mhm. Yes, the dogs pick it up like this. But if you really wanted
Okay.
me to like come up with something, for me, I don't love teaching a heel. So I could do
Mm,
it. And I love when a dog can heel. I just don't necessarily love teaching it because it takes so long to perfect, to get a dog to stay in that one spot. For whatever reason, whether you're doing it for competition or you just want your dog to cross the road with you, next to you. I don't believe in making a dog heel for long periods of time, but I think it's a
hmm.
really valuable position for them to know when needed. So I don't love teaching it, but I do. Like my personal dogs, they have to know it. I just don't love teaching it. However, for the average dog owner, um, I think the hardest thing for them to work through is loose leash walking, which is different than a heel. It's just teaching the dog not to pull, but they can be ahead or behind or next to. They just can't pull. That is probably one of the hardest things for dog owners to teach.
Yeah. What you just mentioned the word valuable. What is the most valuable training skill for a dog owner?
Probably recall, I would
Hmm.
think, would be the most important, because in almost any situation, if you can recall your dog to you, it's probably going to keep them safe. Um, so yeah, that would probably be like number one. Even if they
Right,
didn't know
right.
how to sit, if they could come to you, you could probably keep them safe in some way.
Yeah. So just, I mean, high level, I'm not asking you to give away your trade secrets, but like for somebody listening, if they're having trouble with their dog coming to them, especially
Mhm.
a new puppy, I'm thinking of young puppies not coming back. How do you train somebody to do that?
Yeah. So again, it's all about motivation. You have to show your dog that anytime you call them, great things happen. Now, recall is
Right.
one of those things that even when great things aren't happening, like you have to pretend. Sometimes our dogs are annoying, us by not coming back to us. And so what most owners do is that, let's just say the dog's name was Jax, and they were like, Jax, come. Jax. No, Jax, come over here right now. So one, you have
That
a
sounds
few
like
things.
that sounds like me in the morning with my dog.
Everybody does it. Everybody does it. So one, we have to remember that if we taught the dog Jax come, we have to use the words we taught. They're not
Mm,
learning our language, they're learning sound segments. So right away, if we're throwing out sentences, phrases, slang that the dog has never learned, they're not going to respond, especially if they're distracted, because it's not something that's predictable for them. then our tone of voice changes and we start to sound frustrated or aggravated or annoyed or angry. And so when a dog hears that, they are very good at determining what your tone of voice means, what it's a predictor to. So if they feel that you are in a state of mind that is not healthy, calm, or confident, they're not going to think it's good to come to you. They're going to be like, yeah, you sound weird right now. I'm not going to come to you. That doesn't sound like that's in the best interest for me right now. They are not going to analyze and go, well, if I don't come, worse things are going to happen. They don't analyze like that. Humans can. Like when our kids learn how we work, they can learn like, well, if I don't listen to mom now, it's just going to be worse. And then you have some kids who still don't even care.
Yeah.
But like for a dog, they have to see Jack's come as something that is the predictor to great things happening. So I always suggest first working on that indoors, build that up in an environment that's not distracting so the dog can actually retain information. Just like with my students, like I'm not going to teach them anything at recess. So we're going to learn it inside the classroom first. And then as an extra challenge, we can practice what we've learned outside, but I'm not going to teach it to you outside. So we start in the least distracting environment. And then if you want, really great recall, again, you want your dog to think great things happen. You have to make great things happen. And we usually can do that with food. So something super yummy. If the dog thinks like every time my owner calls me, I get something delicious, they're going to want to start coming to you. And then they're also going to be keeping their eye on you more often to see when you're delivering more. So it has nothing to do with like just doing it because they're supposed to. It's all about motivation.
Okay, that is awesome and helpful. Yes, all about motivation. Do you think food is the best motivational reward, or do you think like there's other things?
Really depends on the situation and the dog. I predominantly use food for a lot of what I do, but it's not always food. And a lot of times when I get a new dog, like a foster dog that I'm trying to shape up so that they can be more adoptable, or my own personal dogs, or maybe a client's dog is staying with me, I usually use their actual meals because they have to eat anyway. So it's not necessarily treats or excess calories. They're working for their food, just like we work for money, right? We have to work for the food on our table. And there was a study that went out where they tested, I want to say it was monkeys. And they did a few tests and they wanted to see like if they were given the option to work for their food, would they take it or would they take the option for free? And they actually preferred working for it. They had to press a lever to get, I think, some food to go into their bowl, or they could get this bowl right here that already had food in it. And they always went to the one with the lever. So, working for it, I think, brought them more pleasure, more satisfaction, more confidence. So we do the same thing for our dogs. We use their meals, but their meals aren't always going to be motivational enough. So sometimes we'll use something higher value, especially if you're outside when there's a lot of little scurry friends out there and we got to compete with that. We will use something higher. Some dogs love toys, so we will use toys. And again, it can depend on the situation. If I'm trying to get my dog to relax and lay down, I'm probably not going to use toys, because that's not going to help. That's going to be counterproductive to what I'm trying to achieve. But at the same time, if I'm again trying to get my dog to relax, I might not use a ton of food either. I might use a little bit to get the dog into the position. And then after a while, we're actually going to take the food away because I don't want him thinking about how can I earn more. I want him going into a settled state. So it really just depends on what you're working on. But food seems to be like the most common, but not every dog is ready for that either. I have a lot of clients who their dogs are not ready to take food outdoors. Because it's just too stimulating out there and they physically can't take the food in that moment. But we work on that. We work on that first. So,
yeah. How young do you think you can start, or how young can you start training? Let's say a family gets a brand new puppy, 6, 8, 9 weeks, however old they are when they wean from the mom. How young can you start? Yeah.
Yeah. Really great question. A lot of people have that question. So you actually start the moment the dog is in your care, like literally the moment, but it's not the same training as you might be thinking. It's not obedience training. Obedience training is going to come more around 6 to 8 months, because
Okay.
obedience you can teach at any age. I could have a dog that is 7 years old and has never learned anything in its life, and I can teach it obedience, no problem. What you really want to work on in those really early stages, most puppies are taken away from their litter around 8 weeks. That's the best age. 8 to 10 weeks is the best age to remove them from the litter. If you're getting a puppy that's younger than that, I would reconsider your breeder, unless it's like a rescue situation. But anyway, you're going to work on things like bringing the puppy out and about to places that are public so they can get used to all of the different stimuli in the environment. You're going to practice crate training. If a crate is something you want to use, you're going to practice grooming, having the puppy feel comfortable with being touched, their tails, their ears, being brushed, brushing their teeth if that's something you want to do, nail clipping or dremeling. There's lots of little things like that. And then, of course, house training or potty training.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like routine that has to be established in those early stages. And then building a very, very small foundation for obedience, like teaching the puppy its name, come, maybe a little stay, nothing crazy. You can't expect a puppy to stay for too long. A sit, but again, they're not going to hold the sit for very long. They're going to be very flimsy and flopsy. Maybe it's going into the down position, but not holding it, just going into it. So teaching them very, very basic things until about 6 months of age.
I was just getting a visual of, we had a lab once, and he was just this little yellow squirt. And I was just thinking about his puppy stage of sitting, and oh, they're so cute at that age.
So cute.
Yeah, I know it. What do you think, in your experience, what breed is that you've worked with are the smartest dogs, the most, receptive to training?
Yeah,
Or is there a breed?
A lot of your herding breeds are going to be really smart, like a border collie. They are ridiculously smart, very smart, and just so willing. They want to learn. They want to do things. And so a dog like that, while they can be challenging because you have to be ready for that type of energy, they are very easy to train in the sense that they pick things up so quickly. But you have to be ready for that type of personality because they are on all the time. But you also have to know how to teach your dog to settle. Like you have to know how to teach your dog when we're not supposed to be on, when we're not working. But they can be very easy to train. But they also are very alert to things in the environment. So I don't always recommend those dogs for most families, to be honest.
Yeah.
Your Belgian Malinois, same thing. It's also a herding breed. They're extremely smart and just want to be super active. Again, not a dog that I would recommend to your average family. Dobermans are on the top. Poodles are on the top of the list as far as being really smart, because again, it's like, I hate to say that they're smarter than other dogs. It's just that they tend to pick up, and they're very observant, and they pick up on things very quickly. So like, even for example, my Doberman, I might show him something 3 times and he's got it. I wouldn't say that he knows the word exactly, but he has figured out what it is I want. And then we can just go from there. And I just have to keep practicing so that word can eventually become conditioned with the action. Whereas my Rhodesian Ridgeback, love him. He takes like 100 repetitions. But their personalities are completely different. So while you have one that is smart and he's fun to train because he's just biddable and he's excited to do anything you ask him to, he's like, tell me what to do, ma'am. My Rhodesian loves it too, but it's just takes many, many more repetitions, but he's so much calmer. He's a much calmer dog. He's more of like, if we can just lay down and do nothing, I'm happy. So I'm not going to say that a smarter dog is a better dog. I think it just depends on what you're looking for. But yeah, so those are some of the top breeds that are the smartest.
Yeah. What do you think are the most family friendly breeds?
Again, it depends on what you're looking for. So if you're
Mm.
looking for a family friendly dog that's also got some energy that you can go hiking with and do some fun things, golden retriever, a lab, but that
Mhm.
doesn't mean that you are free from aggression. I mean, any breed at all can bite. Every dog is
Mm.
capable of biting. Every single dog. I mean, they have teeth. It's what they do. This is their business
Right.
end right here.
Hmm.
So, I sometimes don't like to put breeds in a category like that because some people assume if I get a Labrador, I'm safe. And it's not. In
Right.
fact, um, I had a client who had to put their Labrador down because of aggressive
Mm.
behaviors. That was a little bit more like they were mentally unstable. It wasn't like a training issue. It wasn't something that the
Yeah.
family created. It was something the dog had genetically. And
Mhm.
actually, my worst bite was from a golden retriever. The worst bite I
Wow.
received was from a golden retriever. So you just don't know based off of breed. But if you go to a good breeder, responsible breeder, and there's a difference between breeders, but if you were to go to a responsible breeder and you were to take the proper precautions to make sure the dog is properly socialized, I do think Labradors and Golden Retrievers are a favorite. But then you have some dogs like Rhodesian Ridgebacks and Mastiffs who are very chill. So if you're looking for a dog that is a little less energy, but they're just big, gentle giants, those are good too. And then I love
Yeah.
small dogs. Small dogs are great too. I had a miniature pinscher and she was phenomenal. She was a small dog, but with a big personality. So, it just depends on what the family's looking for. In fact, I just had somebody who asked me recently this very question. We
Mhm.
have a 4-year-old. What kind of dog do you think we should get? And I sometimes think it's less about the breed and more about learning the dog's individual personality, because you can have 3 dogs from the same litter, not just the same breed, but same litter, and
Mhm.
they can have all different personalities. So, if you're really like zoned it, like really wanting a specific personality, sometimes what I would suggest is finding an older dog, not that much older. It could be 6 months, 8 months, 11 months, and you can get a better idea of what their personality is. Is this dog chill? Does this dog like to just sit around and do nothing? Or does this dog like to be active all day? Or does this dog like
Mhm.
both? I
Mhm.
have a foster dog who's like that. She could be energetic when you want her to, or she can just lay down and do nothing if you want her to. So she's kind of like the best of both worlds. So yeah,
Yeah.
individual personality to me is more important than breed.
Yeah. If you don't mind, I'm full of questions. I've got some other
Sure, I
questions in my
love
mind.
questions.
Like how would a family know who is a responsible breeder? Like if they're out there researching and trying to find a breeder, let's just say for Goldens, how would they know who is responsible and who isn't?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of the biggest ways that we distinguish between is your responsible breeders are going to be in it for the betterment of the breed. They're really
Mm.
looking for ways to make that breed better. Whereas your irresponsible ones, we call those backyard breeders, but they don't,
Mhm.
it can be deceiving. It doesn't literally mean somebody's in their backyard breeding dogs. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that they have to have, garbage in their backyard and it's really dirty. Those are the ones that are just doing it for the money, or they're doing it because their dog is so cute and they want their dog to live on and, past
Mm.
generations. So you have to be really careful and notice, okay, who is doing things to make sure the breed is improving. And so they do some testing. They might do some health testing to make sure that specific health issues that are connected with a breed are not being passed down from their dogs to onto other dogs. They also do temperament testing. If you have a female dog that you want to breed, but it is aggressive, that can be passed down to puppies. Or she's skittish and really scared of
Right.
everything, that can be passed down. So that would not be responsible to breed her because
Yeah.
you're just passing those issues down to the puppies for people that are paying good money. So that's one thing. You also want to be able to see the facility. Wherever they
Mm.
are breeding the dogs, they should have no problem with you visiting the facility. It's okay for them to have a set of rules.
Mhm.
It's okay for them to not want you to see the puppies right away, but you should at some point, be able to visit the facility. You want to see if it's clean. Um, You also want to see how responsible they are by what are their plans if you decide you can't keep the puppy. A
Right.
responsible breeder will have no problem taking the puppy back from you and finding a home for it. If they wash their hands of the puppy once it's out of their home, then that's not a responsible breeder. That's just adding to the overpopulation problem.
Mm.
So those are just some. There's other things too. Those are just like the most important ones that I would look
Yeah.
out for that a lot of people don't know. So I'm glad you brought that up because I think a lot of people are not aware.
Yeah. Well, I think your last point there about if they just wash their hands, like sold,
Yeah.
sorry, not taking this
Yeah.
back for whatever the circumstances. I've never even considered that, but that's huge. Yeah. I'm sure that happens
Yeah.
for families for whatever
Yeah.
reason.
And it's
Mm.
usually in their contract. So that's how you'll know. It will tell the person that's adopting the puppy that if for whatever reason you need to give this puppy up, please contact us. So I think that's huge.
Thank you, Denise, for sharing. Yeah, I'd never really considered about responsible breeders and how to find a responsible breeder. So I appreciate your education on that. I was thinking a minute ago about COVID and this is when you got started in your business during that whole time frame. And I'm sure there were a lot of people, and you probably know this very well, who adopted dogs or went and got and bought new puppies all during COVID. And then what happened to those sweet things?
They all ended up back in shelters and
Mm,
rescue. And so at first it was so wonderful because our rescues and our shelters were being emptied. But I remember one of the rescues that I work closely with, she had predicted that she felt like after everybody went back to work was
mm,
when they were going to see an uptick in surrenders. And that is exactly what happened and actually has been getting worse. It's they're getting more surrender requests than adoption requests. So it's been really difficult to adopt dogs out from fosters. Typically, when I take in a foster, they usually are gone within 6 weeks. But
mm,
now it's taking 3 months, 6 months. I had a dog with me twice, same dog. He was adopted after having him for 8 months. Then he was adopted for 6 months, brought back, and I took him in again, and he was with me again for 8 months again, and then was adopted again. So far, he's still there. He has not been returned, and he's the sweetest baby ever. But we're just
aw.
seeing, that's happening more and more, and it's kind of sad.
What do you think is I mean, I have my theories, but what do you think is impacting or, making it hard for people to retain their dogs?
Yeah, I think at first it was because everyone was home and they did not teach the dog how to be home without everybody there. And that can be really
Mm,
hard on a dog, having everybody around, having somebody always around to all of a sudden having nobody. Some dogs would be totally fine with it, but other dogs are just not going to understand that predictability that you're coming home. Even if you do end up coming home later in the day, that was too long of a span for the dog to be nervous. The dog was
mm,
nervous for 8 hours while you were gone. That's all they're going to remember about you being gone was I was nervous that whole time. So now every time you leave, the dog is just going to immediately go into like a panic state. So
mm,
that was the first part because people were going back to work. They weren't
yeah.
getting to work from home anymore. And then I think a big thing is it's hard to own a dog. It's
Mhm.
not as easy as people thought it was. I think a lot of people just want to get a dog and want the dog to figure life out without having to actually show the dog what to do. Now, the dog doesn't need to be shown what to do. The dog will figure out what to do. We just won't like what they're doing. We won't like
Right.
figure it out. We won't like the decisions they make. So you can let them figure it out, but you'll really dislike the decisions they come up with, the routine they come up with. And then people don't know what to do because the dog is chewing on things and destroying their home or barking at everybody. And so instead of putting in the time to help the dog through it, they just kind of throw in the towel. Now, there are some times that people will have to rehome a dog for legitimate reasons.
Right.
I have nothing against that. There are times that I have even suggested that to clients, like, this is just not the right dog for you. Like,
Mhm.
it's not that you're not doing everything you possibly can. Your personalities just don't mix.
Mm.
And I think that's better for the dog to have a family that they would mesh better with. So you're doing the dog, it's doing something good for the dog by giving the dog up and finding it a better home, not just giving it up, but
Right.
going through the appropriate route to find a home. But other
Mm-hmm.
people, what I'm finding a lot is they just don't want to put in the time to help.
Yeah.
So that's where I
Yeah.
came in. That's where I was like, I want to put as much education out there as I can. So you can't use the excuse, I don't have the money, because
Right.
Instagram and Facebook are free. And so is YouTube. I mean, I have all of those things, and I try to put as much information out there to help anybody that is willing to try.
And I was just going to say, we are going to link those show links in the show notes, or link those social links in the show notes, for people to find your free content, which is really generous of you. But I mean, I can tell you do that in the spirit of just helping people help their sweet dogs and keep them home and not have to rehome them or
Yeah.
send them or surrender them. So that's wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah. My theory also on why people have to surrender dogs these days. I mean, the economy, I think I was just saying it to my husband the other night. Like, dog food is really expensive. And so, everybody's more and more in a pinch these days with the cost of groceries going up. And, then they don't realize how much they're having to spend in dog food.
Yeah.
I was even experimenting with making my own in the past month, because it's like, wait a second, I think I can do this cheaper and better and healthier.
Yes, yes. That's so true. I mean, kibble is not the
Mhm.
healthiest option, but I do think that's one of those things that we need to think about before we decide to obtain a dog. It is going to be a financial cost, and I think it's unfortunate that we're not figuring that out till after.
Right.
I definitely understand financial
Yeah.
concerns for people, or if something unexpected happened, you lost your job. Like, I get those. I mean,
Yep.
that is, but there are a lot of people out there that those things are not happening to them.
Mm-mm. Mhm.
And so it gives rehoming a bad name because
Yeah.
some people abuse it, I
Mhm.
think.
Yeah. It sounds to me like not only are there responsible and irresponsible breeders, but there can also be irresponsible dog owners. And it's really important to consider all the factors before you launch out and bring home a new puppy or bring home another rescue or something. What
Yeah.
do you think are the top three things that, a family should consider before bringing in a dog?
Yeah. So definitely make sure financially you're ready, not just for food, not just for grooming, but also training, because that is where I find people struggle the most. Is they want to get rid of the dog mostly for behavior issues. It's
Mm.
not as often for financial reasons. I'm not saying it never happens. It definitely does.
Yeah.
But most of the issues or times that I see people posting about rehoming their dog, it's always because I don't have time to work through this, or I don't know how to work through this. So hiring a trainer might be something you need to do in the future. It's not something you will have to do for the rest of the dog's life. You are going to have to learn how to train so you can do it,
Hmm.
but you might have to
Yeah.
hire a trainer. You never know. So just be prepared for it. So financially, that is definitely something. Vet bills, those are always
Hmm.
piling up. Those
Yeah.
are really expensive too. You're definitely going to have to take your dog to the vet. So financially, make sure you're ready for it. Make sure you have time. Do you have the
Mm.
time to give to another living being? I would not take owning a dog lightly. I think it is so common for American families to have a dog that we do it like we get furniture. It's like a staple of your house. Like, you're supposed to have a dog. But then
Yeah.
unfortunately, sometimes dogs are treated like furniture, where they're there when
Mm.
you're home and there when you're not home. And they just get, played with or interacted with when you feel like it. And so we have to make sure we have the time to put into caring for another being. So time, finances, and then, making sure you have the right environment for the dog you're choosing. So
Yeah.
it's okay to have a dog that is a high energy dog and you live in an apartment, but are you prepared to do extra since you don't have a backyard? You know, um,
Right.
Or it's okay to not have a fenced in backyard, but are you prepared to take your dog out on a nice long line so you don't have to worry about the dog running away? So there's just,
Right.
making sure that your environment is conducive to having a dog, or the type of dog that you have. So those would be the three things I would think about first. And then, doing your research. There are a lot of people who do a lot of research before they get a dog, and I love them for it. But almost every single one of those people that does research tells me the same thing. I did not do enough. I
Oh
didn't
my.
search the things I needed to, or I had no idea, or sometimes they just don't know what they don't know. They don't know what to research because they didn't know about that. So, doing whatever kind of research you can, asking questions, going to a dog trainer and asking questions that you think are important to know about obtaining a dog can be helpful. There's tons of videos online. There's just so much out there now, that, you have free access to, that I personally would never just get a horse. I don't know anything about horses. I wouldn't even know the first thing about taking care of a horse. I know my home is not good for a horse, but I would never just adopt a horse right now just because I think they're cute and I want to ride one once in a while. So I think we need to go with that mindset of I need to learn more about this type of animal. So just because a lot of families have them doesn't mean you're ready for one. So yeah, that research is huge.
That is awesome. So if someone wants to find you and receive dog training, what are their steps to take?
So I am on Instagram. You can find me at Modern Canine Carolinas on Instagram. Same thing with Facebook. You'll find me there. And then YouTube is also Modern Canine Carolinas. So any one of those three. And then when you go to those apps, you will also find some other ways, like my email or phone number. You can access it on that way. But I would say I get the most contact through Instagram. People message me a lot, the most on that app. But you really am always available. And then I have a lot of people who will text me, call me, I'm available in any one of those, but that might be the easiest way to find me.
And if they don't reside in South Carolina, you told me that you even do Zoom education or Zoom training, online training. Yeah. And that is awesome. It's a great way to connect with you.
Yeah.
So great.
Yep. I offer meetings where we can just talk through the client's issues, or actual lessons where I can coach the owner on how to train their dog. So the dog would have to be present, during those. So it's a little different, the lessons and then the meetings.
Well, I'm super glad that during COVID, you had a passion to turn things around and add to your teaching skill, teaching humans, and now teaching humans how to teach their dogs, and just spreading all this joy and love and keeping these dog owners capable of, providing a long life for these sweet puppies. Like I said, if I had a big old farm, I'd have 900 golden retrievers. So great. Thank you, Denise. Take care. And if you like what you've heard today, we ask that you certainly follow Denise on her social media pages and her links, and enjoy her free content, and reach out to her if you need some extra support. And if you like what you've heard today, give us a subscribe or follow on whatever platform you're listening on. And we really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to hear about all these great dog tips. So thanks again, Denise.
Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. I appreciate you taking time to listen. These days we live in feel stressful, challenging, and maybe even chaotic. I'm really passionate about putting out positive content that will encourage and inspire others. I ask that you follow, subscribe, and even give us a 5-star review. Most of all, share this with your friends and family so together we can help people turn their lives around.